Hey everyone, Will Fleming here. Hang with me for a couple seconds before we get into the podcast. Welcome to Talk the Walk. And I just wanted to quickly tell you what this podcast is about. It's in schools. It's me podcasting with my friends in school to a group of students who I hope learn from the walking that these guests have done. I mean that metaphorically and in some cases physically. Not just people who say what they're doing, but they've done it. So in this series, in schools, I'm talking the walk with people who have walked the talk. Okay, enjoy.
I spoke to Lance Burdett, a former police hostage negotiator,
top crisis negotiator for the New Zealand Police, Lance Burdett.
Lance Burdett is this man with so much heart.
I had ADHD. I only just found that out in the last year. And the reason why anxiety has grown is because our brains, all of us, have changed. We all want to fit in because we're social creatures. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. I never had true friends.
Lance Burdett, we're here at Manurewa High School. I've asked you to come in, full transparency. We are doing a podcast in front of a group of students, and the goal is to, I've called it Talk the Walk. I don't want to be involved in education and just come into a room and tell people that they should do something. In my field, which is conversations, which is recording stories, I'm deadly serious about it. And so much so that I'm willing to risk it all to invite my friends like you to come on. Lance, I specifically haven't asked you to introduce yourself in the live space here, but can you do it for us on this podcast to give us a sense of who are you outside of who you are on your website?
Struggled at school, big time. I was the person who stood outside the principal's office for most of my school life. I had ADHD. I only just found that out in the last year. And so ADHD was something that wasn't known. And because you go through my mum, bless her, kept all my report cards. And my first primary school was Bull's School in the Rangitikei. Well, it was actually Hobsonville School for about 3 weeks, and then off we went. And it's littered every year with needs to concentrate, needs to focus, and I only, if I have one regret in life, and that is no one knew what ADHD was. And it wasn't until the age of 35, somebody took the time to show me how to learn. And I wished I'd known that, particularly in my high school years, because primary school just sort of sets you up, and no one taught me how to learn. They teach you things you should know, but not how to remember it. And so that's all you get is that whole rote learning stuff in my generation. And so now it's got a lot more sophisticated. So I'm just a typical average person who I think just fell into things. I had no plan, right? I just drifted through. I remember at third form at high school worrying about getting married and having a house and how could I afford that. So I was a worrier because I didn't know how to reach out and learn and grow. And because of that, it led to later on in life of some things happening when it all came together at once, right? And so out of that little dip that I had, I call it a little glitch in the matrix, and coming out of that, then looking back, and everything just tends to fall into place as to why I'm here, where I am, doing what I am now. But it's taken a long time to get here, and you don't need to take that long. So I'm just another person like yourself who's out there trying to do as much as we can to teach others about our journey.
Do you wish it all went smooth for you in those younger days? Because I guess it's really difficult. Well, is it really difficult to try and explain to people who are young now that what they're going through will be some of the superpowers that they can access?
I wouldn't have listened. There's no way I would have listened. What would you know? This is me. So we all have a voice inside our head, our inner self. And that's the person we tend to listen to, particularly up until our teenage years. Now, after my, and I'd be open about this, I had a real bad time with mental health. And I started to study about the brain and have now developed a whole career on this, about learning about myself. So I was very selfish about wanting to go on this journey. There's certain times in my life that things happen. Now, things don't happen for a reason. They happen. It's what you bring to that. Why? What's the best I can do from this? And that didn't become clear to me till later on, till I joined the police and became the lead crisis negotiator for New Zealand Police. Now I see why this was. Now, I play a video at the moment for organisations I work with, and Steve Jobs has a great quote. He said, teamwork was about a whole lot of people coming together and scraping the rough edges to form rounded stones in a team. Well, that's like life. If you go through without pain, you will not grow. Because pain teaches, if we have, I do have ADHD, and there's about 3 voices going in my head. I'm trying to explain this. They're all going, say this, say that, say this. We learn from, when our brain is at its best, and it's at its best when it struggles. That's the best I can say. And so it's not about enjoying the pain you go through. It's about looking back once the pain has finished and going, right, what did I do well? What could I do differently? How do I move forward from here? It's how you get back up, and don't beat yourself up. That voice that we have that's, with you up to you, it does change. So when we get to our teenage years, we have the biggest growth spurt in our brain. It is the biggest growth spurt, more than when you were ever born. And the brain changes completely. And you've just got to sit and ride it out if you can, right? You're going to get your heart broken. You're going to not achieve what you want to. You're going to see the stars and want to get there now. That's what you have to go through. And enjoy the ride if you can.
So, that's one of the things we're kind of trying to zoom in on is, take a young person, for example, in this podcast today, watching part of this space with us. We're not in that space. So we're looking back, but they're trying to look forward. And I think there's something really interesting. And, I guess I've never asked you these kind of questions, even though we've done lots of podcasting, but is some of the reason you're so fascinated with how the brain works is because you kind of couldn't get a grip on it in those early days?
I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. I never had true friends that I could reach out and go, you're my best friend. I didn't have that. I always felt like I was alone. Well, I'll bet if you asked anyone in this room, they'll feel the same way. You might have that's my bit. Is it somebody you confide in and really, really call your best friend? And we're always looking for that best friend and that best connection, right? So that we can go through, because we see it on TV. We've been friends for 40 years, and no, because life changes and you change and you grow and you learn. So it's about spending as much time as you can, and it sounds cliched, but enjoying your journey and learning as much as you can. So these sorts of courses that you've got a group of people watching us right now, this is where you learn practical things. Practical. May not go on to become podcasters, but they'll know a little bit about now how it works. So they might go off into the media, or they might just be interviewed at some point so they know what's going on. If we can get as many life experiences as possible, that's the way to, because life is experiential. It's not just academic, it's academic and practical. That's what the brain wants. It's an old beast, right? But it's a modern world. And at the moment, I've just finished my book on anxiety, which comes out in August, my next book. And the reason why anxiety has grown is because our brains, all of us, have changed. We now have more information in our brain than ever before through technology. And what that's doing is making us hypervigilant. It means that inside our head, we have something called the amygdala. It is looking for risk. So the brain has one simple thing to do, and that is to keep us alive. And it does so by looking for danger.
So when I walk into the class and the students look at me, I represent a bit of danger sometimes?
You do. So you're them, right? You are them. And so, is it somebody I can trust? What are they going to be And we look for differences, not similarities. The brain is wired to look for differences. As soon as you walk into a room, what's different here? And you will avoid it. That's the way this thing's wired. And so now there's so many things to avoid that it causes all sorts of changes within our brain, and we end up being quite anxious. So the definition of anxiety is worried thoughts. So all of us are worrying more than ever before. That's an absolute given. That's why there has been an increase in anxiety, because we are the amygdala. There's this little neurotransmitter. There's two of them in our brain, is looking for danger. The brain trying to keep us alive and looking for danger. So it has what's called a negativity bias. And it seems like everything is against us. It's not. It's just the way the brain is wired. So if you can learn and read a bit more about how things work within us and human behavior, everything just settles down. It's a story of life. I wish I'd known then what I know now.
And just traveling back to your school days, you mentioned I struggled until someone taught me how to learn. What do you mean by that? If you take us back there, what did they do to help you learn? Because I want to learn how to learn.
Yeah. And I've got friends, good friends of mine who are teachers and have been in the teaching as long as I have been. We're all, I've been done 40 years as teachers. And I say, do you teach people how to learn? Oh, good question. So no, and we all learn differently, slightly differently. And of course it's a juggling act, right? You can't, as teachers, you can't be everywhere with every student. But it wasn't until I got to the police college and a behavioural science teacher sat me down and said, you've got a high IQ. Now, what a high intelligent quotient means is you've got a great ability to learn. It doesn't mean you're clever. It means your brain is, you think differently. ADHD. Right? And so I'm able to do shapes and I can do it in my head. So that means I've got a strong ability to learn. But I learned by rote, by repeat, so I learned the multiplication, the times table. Early age, you learn that. So I believe that that's the way you have to learn everything. And up until the point where I became even a detective, I learned over 200 case law in a period of 2 weeks. You give me a name, I'll tell you the case, the year, what happened in it, and just, you can soak it up, but it was all done by rote. So she said to me, you're struggling. Here's different ways of learning. And so one of them was mnemonics, making up sentences, words with long, one of my passwords is I like rainbows. Well, that's an acronym for something previous, right? So that's how it works. That didn't work for me. So then eventually I found my own way. And I found that by reading and writing at the same time was how I learned, but just not writing on a piece of paper, and no one can read my handwriting. So I went up to the classroom every night and I would have my notebook and I would be reading and I'd be sort of memorizing it. And then I'd do it on the whiteboard. And then I'd get a white, do it over there. And somebody walked in on a Sunday when I was studying and looked around the room, and the look on their face was like, there's a crazy person in this room, because it just looked like I was a savant. You've seen those movies where they do all these calculations everywhere, but can I show you on the board? Have we got a pen here and show you? So if I was to write something, I would write, what should I write? The sun is shining. Yes, the sun is shining. You can read that, right? Some of you can. So that's how I did it. And I can read that. And you can imagine somebody walking and going, are you all right? But that's how I learned to learn my own style. And I guess, yeah, if we can find our own style early on. So that's one of the things I'm actually doing in our workshops at the moment. It's called Self. And one of them is, how do you learn? And have you ever thought about that? So that hopefully empower others to say, I don't like the way I learn. I learned it in school. Is there another way of doing this? And we all learn slightly differently. There's more than 7 learning stuff.
Lance, I want to move to I guess the idea of purpose and meaning in life. I'm very big on trying to see where we all fit And I know that's sometimes a confronting question because a lot of us kind of work in our communities and our families and we play a role in that. But I just have this idea in my mind, maybe even a belief, that we're all kind of given something. And it's a little bit up to that community and your courage to find what that is so you can do that as a job. What do you think of when I say that?
Everybody in this room wants to have a friend, wants to know where they fit, wants to know. So if I look at the modern world we're in now, I would love to have a whakapapa. I don't. My genealogy goes to France, to the UK, to Ireland, so I don't have something to base myself on. So I feel lost. Even today I feel lost. And so, my wife is Māori, and I do a lot of work with Māori and mana whenua. They've got an identity, and that's really important, right? And you'll see a shift in the population now to going back to that, a sense of identity. We like to socialize, but each of us has to know our identity. So I feel comfortable now knowing why I was different. And I'm not really that different, am I? He's looking for help here. He's looking for the response. But I now know where I fit in the world, and it's a beautiful place. And now I can be at my best. I know I have unusual facial expressions when I talk because somebody hurtingly pointed it out to me with some negative feedback I was doing a online workshop and said, this guy's facial expressions.
What we do?
I don't know, but my face I have really weird. I've had photographs taken of me during, I present to audiences, keynote presentations and things, and they'll somebody take a photo and go, have a look at this. So I put one of them up online on our social media feed and just said, here you go. This is me. This is who I am. That's a you problem, not a me problem, because I'm me. And I'm quite comfortable in that. I don't want to be somebody else. The only thing that I do differently is I'm very careful when I phrase my sentences these days. I do have a potty mouth. I grew up in West Auckland and we talked differently out there. And so I'm very careful and polite and professional, and I try to be as much as I can. But yeah, I'm comfortable where I am right now in the world.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I guess I just want to get your thoughts on, when you're me and you come into a space like this, I'm taking a huge gamble that the things I'm saying won't do more harm than good. So one of the things I have made assumptions just through my observations in life is that there's some anxieties which, say, for example, I challenge the students to speak out loud in the class. And that can conjure up some, well, I don't want to do that. I want to get away. And I want to sit with them and say that actually that's maybe one of the anxieties that is there, but it's not one to run from. It's one to face. It's one to have a bit of courage. What are your thoughts when I talk like this? Because the last thing I want to do is for everyone to go home and have sleepless nights because I pushed them too far beyond the reef.
Encouragement is good. Pushing is not. And that's the problem we have. So when we encourage people to do things, we're encouraging them based on our own sense of who we are and our own experiences. Now, I was going to give up my speaking world because of my huge anxiety. I don't know if you can see it. This is my third interview today, but you see the shakes? So that's adrenaline and a little bit of fear. So I've been on the AM show, the breakfast show this morning, then a MediaWorks podcast, and now I'm here. And then I've got another meeting, right? So I would never have been able to do that 5 years ago. But I took the journey. And what I've learned is that you never get used to it. You learn to want to challenge yourself. And it comes from dopamine, a neurochemical in our brain. When we want to take on challenges, we must take it slowly, a small step at a time. Otherwise, we get triggered and we are likely. So the analogy I use is, don't go down by the river. The last time you went down by the river, a crocodile came out and nearly ate you. So the brain is wired to say, river, avoid, because there's crocodiles. So to get up in front of an audience and speak and talk, I mean, we're doing this podcast, people looking at us, and I know this is going to go somewhere into the stratosphere. And I'm comfortable with that, right? Because I know it's something now that I enjoy doing because I've got used to it, but also I love the challenge. And this is the thing about us. Our brain, it will stagnate if you stay in that same position. So you've got to learn how to go back to that river and manage the crocodiles. And the only one way to do that, and that is to start going back there a little bit at a time.
That takes a bit of guts, a bit of courage.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
See, it's not guts. It's not tenacity. It's not bravery. I'm not a brave person. I'm the weakest person you'll ever find. It's just, I want to challenge myself. You know, I used to jump out of planes, parachute, obviously, just because it was a fear I had. I never mastered it. And I remember on my last jump I ever did, it was a free fall with no attachment. And I said to the guy before he put me out the plane, I said, this is my last jump. He said, why? Are you not enjoying it? I said, I am so scared that I just can't see the ground. And that's not a good thing when you jump out of a plane. But it was the best one I ever did because I'd said, this is my last one. And I love those sorts of opportunities because out of that, you think, yeah, I did my best. Right? We've got high perfection. We want to achieve. We want to be like them. Don't be like them. Be like you. And know that there's a great word, yet. I'm not there yet. I'm like to get there sometime. If we have that sort of a mindset, all right, but I don't want to be like anyone else. I don't want to go to a professional speakers association and say, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you've told them. I don't want that. I want to be me and yeah, be yourself, because if you're genuine, then the honesty comes through.
Just a thought that I just had. What's this experience been like talking in front of a group of young people? Because I know when I teach, there's words we use as adults that are a lot of filler, but I'm wondering if you're having thoughts about when you're saying stuff and you know there's an audience of younger people, if it's helping refine some of the things you think of as good advice.
It does. I'm very cautious in what I say at the moment, right? So I went down to Otago Boys High and I did a few high schools and I can't do this stuff. I would never be a high school teacher. I don't know how to explain from an adult perspective. Apparently they went really well.
Yeah, you could write it.
Apparently I can write it. Look at that. The sun is shining. So yeah, it's I can't do it. I can't explain to high school kids. I remember what it was like. You and I were just talking coming across here. My high school was Fraser High in Hamilton and then ended up being Massey High in West Auckland. When I was walking through there and when I came to sign in I felt like I spent so much time outside the principal's office. I was like, I'm back here again. So it takes you back to that little, right, and that whole uncertainty thing. But, so that's not for me, but I'm happy to do this in this sort of environment. But when people say, so you've got to know your capabilities, I guess is what I'm saying. I would love to be able to impart my knowledge of what we've talked about here. And this is why I appreciate it. And I just said, yeah, I'm there. I jumped at this chance because it gives me the opportunity to stretch myself and to see how this goes. And am I able to take my words and change it slightly to resonate with young people?
The thing when everyone researched your website, because that's where everyone went before.
Is that why we got the spike?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was this word, I heard it a lot, crisis negotiation. Mm. And I've been fascinated since meeting you about how we can use some of these tools to negotiate with ourselves. You know, I've asked you in the years gone by, like, sometimes I wonder if you learned all those skills so you could talk to those other voices in your head, if you know what I mean, metaphorically. But can you talk to us a little bit about that journey, how professionally, how you kind of went through that, phase of your life and what it actually means to be dealing with people at the most heightened they will be in their whole lives, presumably?
It's following a process and trusting yourself. is the two things that I take from my crisis negotiating. And I remember when I drive out here, there's a bridge that goes under the motorway, and I remember that as there was a high school. I'm not sure what high school it was, but this person was wanting to jump off, and encouraging that person to come back, and I'll be with you, and saving another life. And I look back on those days and I think, how could I do that? But you do it. Right. And it is the biggest thrill you'll ever do in your life is saving someone else, and even saving somebody else who's angry and in a house, barricaded, intoxicated, not coming out, just hating the world, and being able to talk with them and to encourage them to come out peacefully. And every time it is just the biggest buzz you will ever get in your life, and just changing a person. The biggest change I ever had an influence on anyone in my time in the police, I lived in Te Aratu North, or it's called Te Aratu Peninsula now. And I was driving home to pick up my lunch, because over in the police you have a crib meal, they call it. You have a meal whenever you can, so you're on the run. And I saw somebody driving their car, and I thought, that's disqualified driver. So I stopped them. A guy with a full facial tattoo and two kiddies in the back, and no reg, no warrant. And I took him through a bit of a process. And I said to him, well, you're going to come with me, and there's going to be some things happen. So we'll look after your kids, and car's going to be, impounded and all that sort of stuff. Or you go home and never drive that car again. And I still get a little tear in my eye every time I talk about it. He looked at me and he went, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." Now, was that out of kindness? No, it was probably out of fear, because I didn't think I was going to be able to get him in the car because I was alone. But that changed my life. And that started me on the journey to become a crisis negotiator. I knew he was telling me the truth. He said, "I promise." And I remember it to this day, and it really got me here. And so from then on, it was just, how can I do more of this, and how can I do more of this, and how can I, which is why I'm here. How can I help somebody just, to be different? There'll be people in the room here, and I can see them in their faces. There's about 3 of them that are quite scared of, or apprehensive is the term I use. And don't be. What's the worst that can happen? Everyone laughs.
They're probably worried about their one question that they need to ask, because I know I would be. And that's just a little shout out to our group of crew here. Start thinking about something that our friend Lance has talked about, something that you want to ask, and I'll throw over to you soon. So there's fair warning. I guess we've talked a little bit about, you as a youngster, you as still a youngster and moving into your teenage years. But,
do you want to see my gold card?
Yeah, we'll save it. The big reveal. What's your hopes and dreams going forward, Lance? Like, are you someone who dares to dream forward? Are you someone who stays in now? What?
No, I always say be in the moment, but you can't be. I've got, so I was going to retire, if that's such a word. No, I will never retire. Apart from the research saying that when you do, your life expectancy isn't that much longer. It's not that. It's just that there's always a challenge. I still feel we've all got a younger person inside us, haven't we? You all nod your head. You've all got a voice that's telling you not to nod, so ignore it. It's you. And so this younger self of me says, you've got so much more to do. And so only now we've just reached out to, and we've gone global with some of our videos. So the UK have grabbed them and said, we love this stuff. Can we start marketing them? And now we're trying to get into North America. So it's big business. It's me, my daughter and my wife, and my other daughter and son are a little bit in the background, but that's the big, and we're making such an impact, I think, in New Zealand alone, but it's going into Australia now. And then who knows where it goes. And so you've always got to get out of bed for a reason. And that'll go on forever. And if you've got a reason to get out of bed, then get out of bed.
I often in the podcast arena, if that's a way to describe it, ask guests to, I guess, talk about, actually, no, I'll rephrase that. Quite often in the classroom arena, my expectation is on students that they be a tiny bit brave. You know, that they
Good.
I try to provide a space where, like, ultimately we're just together. We're very different from every other classroom right now. We're doing something slightly, you know, on the edge, but that requires a bit of courage and trust. Is there something happening in your life at the moment that's shareable where you're needing a bit of courage and trust?
I mean, pretty much it's daily. It is daily. So I'm always looking, what can I do better? At the moment, it's fully focused on the business. And there's one driver behind why I do what I do, and that's my family, my whānau, right? And we all have something called a hook. It's what we love. And so what can you do that brings joy to what you love? So if I can, and it was only by pure coincidence that my family ended up working with me, not for me, with me, out of circumstances, happenstance, you know, luck, whatever. It just happened. And it wasn't until I was doing a live broadcast that I suddenly realized that they kept me going in tough times, and now they all work for me, with me, or I work for them. I don't know. Right. It's a whole different dynamic. And so that's why I do what I do. And my wife and I have had some talks about, you know, I was always doing something. I was always working hard, always. And the only one reason I did it was for them, not realizing that I should have spent time with them. But that's my main driver. What can I do for them? And we all have something that we want to hold on to. And so what are you doing for them? And that helps motivate you to do what you do. So taking that little step, is it going to be positive for what I love? So that's where, you know, forget about the voice, forget everything else. That's the risk management tool. Worry is a risk management tool. The voice is a risk management tool. Ignore it, right? It's just a safety mechanism saying, no, you stay here. If this thing took over, none of us would get out. We'd all be sitting at home.
I think it's just interesting that you acknowledge that there are these voices that go on and no one talks about it. And like, is it just
all
me?
got one.
Yeah.
When I do these, and it's my generation that don't like to uncover that, because we grew up in a different world, right? Where you don't show emotions and, you know, that's all that stuff. And I'll say, you know, who puts you under most pressure? You do. Who do you talk to most in your day? And somebody will say something, I'll say, yourself. And if you're thinking, no, I don't, you're doing it right now. Oh. So we have a younger self, you know. But we have these things that are there for us. You know, how many of us have ever sat next to the emergency exit door of an aircraft and looked at the handle and wonder what would happen if you pulled it? Right? And I just look around the room and everyone's going, you'll die. But we have very, very similar, you know, with it being people, we're very, very similar.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up our part.
Sure.
Because this is the part that we'll put online, and we're going to switch over to the students, which won't be public. But Lance, just want to thank you quickly for
pleasure,
you know, answering the back call. And as always, it's amazing to sit in these different environments with you to talk about life. It's been one of the great joys in my life to build these friendships.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.